It's time to speak truth in the midst of chaos, to discern fact from fiction in a world of agendas. To take control of your thoughts, define the truth, and live a life set free. It is time for counseling beyond the couch.
Good afternoon. Welcome to AWAKEN360's Counseling Beyond the Couch with Heather Freeman, licensed professional counselor and founder and director of AWAKEN360. Along with myself, Jenny Sotai, I have over 20 years experience in licensed nursing and including psychiatric placements. Good afternoon, Heather.
Good afternoon. How are you, Jenny?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad.
I'm excited for today.
Me too.
So, want to get us started?
Yeah, I'll dive right in. Today's show is sponsored by AWAKEN360, a nonprofit counseling center located in Springfield, Missouri. We have a mission to restore hope and empower the community through education, preventative youth groups, counseling, and community. Join the mission and register for programs at www.awaken360.org. Well, we've got a heck of a lineup. You know, after last week, I didn't really feel like we gave due justice to that question that we had written in about how to let it go. We kind of glazed over it a little bit, but we didn't give a lot of detail into what exactly that looks like, if there was a step-by-step process on how to do that.
It's a big question.
It really is, and I think there's a lot to hash out with it. And so I would agree with the question asked that I want to get into a little bit more on that and give it justice and give it time. We want to follow up on some ideas that we introduced last week about the foundations of propaganda by the self-coined father of propaganda, Edward Bernays, and his work coordinating with his uncle Sigmund Freud to utilize the very foundations of psychology itself and Freud's psychoanalytic theory to manipulate and sway the public opinion at the request and the discretion of the highest bidder. As we explore this past and current connection, outlining the techniques that were used, we apply those very concepts to understanding the sad truth that a lot of us have admitted to ourselves, that we are our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
By observing these tactics and techniques, many used and still used today to sway the masses by manipulating emotion and perspective, we too fall prey to our own propaganda within our mind. Thoughts, perspectives, rooted in fear, rooted in assumption, founded in our doubt, that culminate to form the very lens through which we view our world, our relationships, our self-concept, and our self-worth. It's from these foundational concepts that we get our coping mechanisms, our reactions, and our processes by which we live and react to the world around us. If we can begin to understand how to consume information within our external world, we can also utilize the same concepts to understand how to be good consumers of our own internal thought processes. And believe it or not, one of the biggest feedbacks I get from people is that the scariest place to be found isn't inside their own head.
That's a scary place to be for me.
And I think for us all sometimes, especially when we're wrestling with fear and doubt. And so oftentimes what we find is that in life, we execute coping mechanisms, distractions, to avoid being alone with ourselves. My goal and our goal, Jenny and mine, the goal of AWAKEN360 is not just to define, we don't want to define your experience for you. We don't want to define your foundational truths. More, we want to empower you with the tools to discover your own. And when we seek the truth, we often find it. If we seek it hard enough, it will set you free of doubt, of fear, of insecurity, so that you don't have to be afraid of your own mind. You don't have to be afraid of the world's tactics to sway your view. You don't have to fall prey to the bias of that highest bidder. You can feel confident in your own thoughts, knowing that you're not being manipulated by emotion, you're not being swayed by the invisible governors of our time, but you are responding to truth, and the truth sets you free. It's time to take ownership of our thoughts and ownership of our lives. So we're going to dive right into that Berean breakdown and the reframe by really looking at some of those concepts. And I know I've repeated this concept multiple times of foundational beliefs, core values essentially, but really it's what you root into. I challenge people in counseling to have a good set of three. If you have three really hard-seated beliefs in your life that kind of rule everything, from them you build the entire structure of how you perceive the world around you and how you react. Now it's really hard sometimes to develop those, especially whenever you've grown up in a world where truth was relative,
right,
or different. I think later the story that you're going to share is really going to be a great example.
Yes, I think we both love sharing this
Yes.
story so much, and I'm excited to share it.
Me too. Me too. Yeah, CBT is all about having those foundational beliefs and being really able to root into them. But I was thinking about it on the way over here. If you were to imagine your mind as a garden, right?
Right.
And you only want good things that are going to produce fruit to grow in that garden, aren't you going to be mindful of the seeds that you allow to take root?
Absolutely.
So what if you're brought up to believe that something that we would call a weed, right, was actually something that was supposed to be there? What if you were brought up to believe that that was truth? How do you know to fight it if you don't know the difference between healthy thinking and unhealthy thinking?
Well, I would probably feed it. I recently had this experience.
Okay, sure.
I planted some seeds, and then some rain came, and some greens started to sprout, and I began to really nurture this one seed.
Mm-hmm.
And about a month in, I had been nurturing a nasty little weed.
Oh, no.
And so I was sad.
Yeah.
And then I went and bought some flowers.
Yeah, to replace
them.
Yeah, but so, foundational beliefs are really, really, really key. They're a key part of everything in the idea of reframing your thoughts. And exactly, it really touches in on everything that we've been sharing about, Edward Bernays and his work. And so I really wanted to kind of jump in to share another level of that. So last week I shared that quote about Edward Bernays.
Yes.
We've got a couple others that we're going to go over, but it's the idea of that invisible government truly ruling our country, right?
Right.
By introducing their bias at the highest bidder. Well, what if you're brought up into a family where one standard is the set standard, and that's what you're brought up to believe, where one idea, and let's say, not all of us, none of us grow up in perfectly healthy families, right?
Right.
So when you're brought up around constructs, let's bring anger up, for example.
That's a good one.
Well, it's a hard one.
Yeah.
Because most people think anger is bad.
Right. I think we're looking maybe the response to anger.
Yeah.
What we think of in the response to anger.
We worked together for a long time with kids that really struggled with it, Jenny. So, when we talk about anger, let's dive into that as our example right now for foundational beliefs. What would have been some of the foundational beliefs that are some of the youth that we worked with so many years ago? What was their background? What was their truth about anger?
Well, I think a lot of them we've seen came from an abusive home.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of one young man in particular, and this little boy had literally become his diagnosis. And he was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder and oppositional defiant disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a situation where one of our techs had asked this young man to put his cards up. And he wouldn't, and she said, "You have to put those cards up right now." And he began to throw the cards. He was not going to put them up. He threw them in. As we processed through that later, he told me, "I had to, Miss Jenny. I have oppositional defiant disorder." And so then we worked through, what triggers are and how we can change that process with him. But he always comes to mind for me because he really thought he needed to act out and play out his diagnosis.
Yeah, well, I'd have two questions to that. Obviously diagnoses, just like in the medical field, that diagnoses are supposed to be communications back and forth between provider to provider. Right. Unfortunately, we like to replicate models. So the earliest, field for health would have been physical health. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you got to be physically healthy in order to be mentally healthy. And so, that diagnosis was really to be able to have an ease of communication back and forth from providers. So like you were in the medical field, so you have a diagnosis for what illness this person is facing. You've got their chart at the end of the bed. That way when rotation happens and you come on shift and the previous nurse that was working with this patient goes off shift, they know that maybe it's a high-risk pregnancy, or maybe this is what this person is facing, right? And it's to have that ease of communication, so you don't constantly have to say, okay, what is their symptoms, and re-diagnose them every single time.
Right.
And it's just to make it more fluid. Well, unfortunately, that's one of the backsides of it, is sometimes when a patient finds out, or a client finds out what their diagnosis is, it kind of comes a part of their identity. Another example would be like personality disorders. You know, when clients of mine that get diagnosed with bipolar, that's not personality disorder, but when they get diagnosed with bipolar or with borderline personality disorder, that can be a really hard one, because it like creates this box that people have to live up to. So back to your example, Jenny, this kid had been told he had intermittent explosive disorder, and then
oppositional defiant disorder.
ODD. Yeah.
So then he must be oppositional.
Yeah.
Was his thinking. And so we worked really hard with that young man, and he did a great job. His parents did a great job, and we were able to pull them out of that space and looking into what coping skills to move him forward. You brought up Edward Bernays, and so just yesterday I learned of a quote from Uncle Freud, and I would like to read that to you, if that's okay.
Oh, go for it, Jenny.
The masses never thirsted after truth. They demand illusions and cannot do without them. Whoever can supply them with illusions is easily their master. Whoever attempts to destroy their illusions is always their victim. And then you educated me on something that happened in 1948.
Okay, go for it.
And I thought this was just kind of mind-blowing to me, maybe because it really highlighted my lack of knowledge regarding this for me. So correct me if I'm wrong, because I just recently learned this.
Well, and I only just came across this, somebody shared this with me, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago.
So, and you taught this to me, Heather, so correct me if
No,
I'm wrong.
go
So in
for it,
1948, Congress passed the Smith-Mundt Act, is that correct? And this said, basically, and I'm doing this from memory, that the propaganda used in advertising, is that right?
Not necessarily but it was like the Voice of America was specifically, and that the Voice of America was supposed to only go out to other countries, not to Americans.
And tell us why that was.
Because it was America's bias, essentially. So, you know, our viewpoints, our things that we valued that kind of were controlled by us, you would call propaganda, to kind of sell our agenda to the world. In 1948, they were only allowed to broadcast things like that to other countries. They were not allowed. There was a section in that legislation that prevented them from being able to utilize those same tactics and techniques on Americans.
So basically, we had created this, I don't want to say evil, but persuasive power.
Yeah, persuasive.
And
yeah,
we
definitely.
had agreed in 1948 that we wouldn't use it on ourselves.
Yeah, it was state funded. It was state funded media, and so yeah, I definitely wouldn't put it automatically into a good or evil or anything like that, but more just that they recognized there was an active bias that was being sold, and you know. Bernays would probably be the first to say that, you know, you can use that. He has a quote where he says that education is selling the bias of things we believe to be true. Propaganda is selling the bias of things we know to be false. Okay. And so he would probably see that one of two different ways.
That's an excellent way to explain propaganda.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well,
so tell us what
happened.
So, you don't want to take credit for that,
I don't want to take credit.
So tell us, Heather, what happened in 2013.
Yeah, in 2013 they removed that caveat to that original amendment from 1948. So they repealed that ban, and so starting in 2013, state-funded media was allowed to be used stateside instead of just for other countries. And so, it's just good to know. I think it's good information. Information's power.
And it makes you look at things a little differently.
Yeah, I think it highlights the need to be a good consumer of information, to even more so than we did before. You know, on this program, we're talking about two different levels. We're talking about, you know, the level of the external information that is processed, but then we're also talking about the internal information that's processed. So from your own thoughts, how fear sells a propaganda, how your doubt sells an agenda. And that's a hard one to fight. But not only is that a hard one to fight, but also the environment from which you grow up. I know that you're going to get into an amazing story later, so I'm not going to go there, but I'll use another example. My old supervisor, Max Loya, used to tell the story to kids in group and to older adolescents in group therapy. And it was essentially that you get invited as a teen or an adolescent to go over to a friend's house for dinner. And everybody, goes inside, and you grab your plate and you head off into your friend's room, and your friend's like, hold on a second, where are you headed? And the friend's like, well, I'm headed to the room. I thought, isn't that where you guys eat dinner? I always eat dinner in my bedroom. And he goes, no. Come on, let's grab our plate. My mom just made dinner. Let's go into the dining room. We're going to eat together. What? Why do you guys eat together?
Right.
Okay, yeah. So then follows this friend, goes into the kitchen, goes into the dining room. They get the meal. They all sit down. And then as they're sitting down, kid just starts shoveling food, right? And he's like, hold on. We got to pray. What? That's weird. Okay. What is this thing? It's kind of awkward, okay. Then they start eating, and he just starts kind of eating. And dad's talking, the mom's talking, asking all sorts of questions. How was your day? And kid's kind of like,
this is so weird.
This is so awkward. Why are we doing this? But he kind of gets in the groove, kind of just starts talking, learns how this is their normal. Normal is not healthy or unhealthy. Normal is just what you grow up to be used to. And so as he keeps going, they get up, and my favorite part that Max would always share was they get up to clear the plates, and everybody goes into the kitchen, tosses the food, wherever they toss it, the trash can probably, and then goes over and starts washing the dish. And the kid leans over, drops his plate down for the family pup to start licking the food, and puts it up in the cabinet. And and so I'm always like, oh, that's gross, Max, that's nasty. But it's a definition of normals and what you grow up with. That becomes your truth. That becomes your foundational thought. And man, you don't realize how strong and powerful those are until you start to see that other people live differently. And then it's your truth up against theirs. And you have to go, okay, do I like my truth? Do I not like my truth? And if it's not a really foundational component to your life, then it's going to be pretty easy to ask if I want to continue with this viewpoint or if I want to change it. But man, when it's a really integrated part of your existence, it's really hard to fight. I won't go into details, obviously confidentiality reasons, but I had a recent client who was adopted out of some really bad. My normal. It would go outside of my normal, and I think most of us would say very unhealthy. I don't even want to get into all the details. I wouldn't get into all the details, but just needless to say, like, the idea of waking up and people using was normal. The idea of coming out of your room, having to go steal from gas stations to get food, that was normal.
Right.
The idea of not eating for days. Nobody made food. You just went into the kitchen, opened up the fridge, if there was a fridge, to see if there was food. There wouldn't be anything, so then you go to the street and you start looking for food. And you did whatever you had to do to find it. And, where was mom? Where was dad? That could have been an answer of, maybe prison, maybe jail, maybe somebody's house. You didn't know where the members of your family were. You loved these people. That's your family. That's your mom. That's your dad. You love these people. They love you in whatever capacity and knowledge that they have, that they can. But it's like anybody that gets access to money, immediately it's, hey, can you spot me $20? Hey, can you do this? And
let me hold that 20.
The concept of love is you need to share your resources completely open, and if you don't, there's a problem. And it's very quid pro quo, right? And so instead of love being conditional, love is conditional now, because I need, and my basic needs are so heavy that I have to go where I can find those needs to be met. People are commodities to be traded at times. I'll let your mind go where it goes on that. And so that was truth. That was normal.
And a truth that will follow this person into the next chapter of their life if they don't address it.
Absolutely, and created a lot of struggle because, I mean, you can't imagine the contrast between the truth that person focused on and the truth that they came from, and then the truth that they were being introduced with. It was night and day difference. And so not only was this person having to get acclimated to, I go home and the food's readily available.
Mm-hmm.
They had access to a family dynamic where, there was a male figure in the home. That was the male figures for this person were untrustworthy. You could not trust men. You did not engage in conversations with men. They were an authority figure or a power presence, essentially, and there was no trust or love to be had there. So there was an immediate...
What you're saying reminds me, have you recently heard this? I think I've asked you this recently. Have you heard the Brandon Laney Wilson, the Jesus I Know Now?
Yes.
And there is a line in there that says, His grace takes some getting used to.
Yeah.
And that story really reminds me of that. Before this segment ends, I want to go back, if you don't mind. Do you remember this story you told us about the woman with the cigarette?
Oh,
can you do a short
Bernays.
recap on that, Heather?
For Bernays?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, Torches of Freedom. I encourage you to look it up, yeah. You can see, there's a lot of people that have done research into Freud's and Bernays' partnership to introduce propaganda. I'm not sure how active Freud's side of it was other than teaching his nephew, but there's a lot of people that have done research. But the Torches of Freedom, he not only did he have, a woman at the Easter parade, light up and then say that it was to fight and combat, social stigmas against women smoking in public. But the idea that you could convince half the world's population to start smoking to fight for freedom, well, not only was it brilliant, but the sad part of it was that so many people fell for it.
Right.
And they fell for it because they genuinely probably had pure intentions of, oh my gosh, if this is really going to buck the authority that I feel, the thumb that's pressing down on me, and this is a way to do it, that's so easy. I just have to go to the convenience store and buy that, and then but who did it profit in the end? And that's the sad part was, he was paid probably a very nice, at the time, sum of money because the cigarette company, and I can't remember the name of the company, was only able to sell cigarettes to half the world's population, and they were missing out on 50% of proceeds that they could make. So they wanted to expand their sales and make a lot of money, and they did so at the expense of moms.
Millions of Americans.
Millions.
So what that looks like today, so I think we can all look back and picture that and be like, oh, but so I was looking at things like that in today's world, okay? Yes. So stuff what we can relate to and how it's been used against us. So I'm going to bring up a company that you're all familiar with. Most of us had a dad that carried, a Stanley thermos, right? That big, ugly green thermos.
And it is.
Did you ever have any interest in carrying that around?
I love my
dad's
thermos.
It was a great product. It kept things warm or cold. But in 2019, Stanley's revenue was at about $73 million. That's a lot of money. But in 2019, they launched the program where they began to market to women.
Sure.
And what did they do? They only did one thing.
Changed the color.
They changed the color.
No more olive, puke, green.
No. So it was pink and it was purple and it was cute. And suddenly every mom and their daughter had to have a Stanley cup. And by the end of 2023, this company, their revenue was $750 million.
Oh my goodness.
Just by changing the color.
They added a zero.
And now poor people like my sweet little daughter-in-law has a cabinet full of Stanley cups.
That's hilarious.
That they never use. So I just thought that was very interesting and just a really great example of how that works in today's world.
So on this one, why is it so important to be able to recognize, bias, not in your own head? Because normal is relative. If I grow up inner city, where it's normal for, the story I just told of a previous client that I'd worked with, right? And many previous clients that we've worked with, to be honest, their normal was abuse. Their normal was love was something that was conditional, love that was something that had to be earned. And to quote one of my very dear clients from several years ago, whoever was the best wolf in the room was the one that would survive. And so the only way to be able to survive the world that I live in is to no longer be a lamb, but to be a wolf.
Right.
And start taking advantage of people. And so foundational truths are important because you have to be able to root them into truth regardless of what your normal is. And you have to learn the techniques to be able to see the difference between what's a weed in your mind and a seed that's going to actually bear good fruit. And that's really hard when your normal is so skewed. So that's where we're going to be kicking off. Our next one is to take that next step to be able to identify how to be able to tell the difference between unhealthy, quote-unquote, normals and healthy normals. The last truths that I want to lead with you is that we all have bias, every single one of us, and it's developed because of our quote-unquote normal. And second, there are people and there are parts of your own mind that are trying to influence that truth because of control. Outside world, the highest bidder is trying to influence your bias to be able to either get you to buy more Stanley Cups or to be able to get you to light up for torches of freedom or whatever it might be. But inside your own mind, your fear thinks and tricks you into thinking that it's acting this way because it's going to protect you. But in fact, you're really just shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
So, moving forward, Miss Jenny, let's hit that question.
Which question? Let's talk about it.
The let it go.
The let it go. The hard one. The hard one.
Sorry. That'd be my daughter coming in.
I love that song. Kind of. Not really.
I
also have granddaughters.
The millionth time of hearing it.
I also know that song very well. So let's hit Let It Go and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Letting it go, I was driving over here and I was really thinking, okay, how can we really dive into this and give this question some really good justice and some time and define that? Well, first, I'll give you the punchline, which I'm so great at doing with jokes. I always do the punchline first. That's why I'm a terrible joke teller. You're not letting go. You're really not. There's no way to let it go.
Right. There are just some of life's pain, some of life's tragedies. You're never going to be able to just forget about and move on with life, for sure.
So to all of you listening who went, wait, I've been going to counseling for how long just so I can let this go, and you're telling me I'm never going to be able to let it go? Well, that's no. Just wait. We're going to continue. The first part of that truth is that you can't let it go. You're right, Jenny. There's so many things that can happen in this world that you can't let go, nor should you.
So let's talk about anchors then.
Mm-hmm.
So what are anchors, Heather?
Anchors are those foundational truths. And this is why they're so, like in this, your ability to handle when life falls apart demonstrates your foundational truth and your anchors.
So this always makes me think of addiction and the families of addicts and how so often their lives revolve around whether or not their loved one is going to relapse. And when that relapse happens, their world falls apart. They can't function because their anchor was in the wrong spot. So what are some maybe small everyday anchors that we can use so that we're not anchored in the wrong spot?
Well, we'll go into that example first. Whether or not someone is sober or they're using is a really big black and white. And the truth is, sobriety is a journey, not an outcome.
Right.
First, you've got to deal with the behavior. So whether it's alcohol, whether it's illicit substances, your addiction could be shopping. Who knows? It could be to your phone. You know, whatever your addiction is to that addictive behavior, that's the first thing. But to be honest, that's outside in change.
Right.
You know, I have bit my nails and picked at my fingers to cope with anxiety since I was a little girl, and I still pick at my fingers if I'm really, really, really struggling.
Right.
And so, you know, changing that would be an outside in. The internal change is what you're looking for. So I've had a lot of, you know, I remember a client specifically several years ago who came to us because of addiction, and she was like, well, are you an SUD therapist? I said, no, I'm not. I'm not a certified SUD, substance use disorder trained and licensed and certified. Yeah, that is a specific niche in counseling. And I don't have that training, but here's what I do have. I do have the training to address the reasons why you started using.
Right.
And so we can look at this as an outside in, and that change is going to be like painting a rock gold and saying that it's gold. That's only going to last until it starts chipping.
Right.
But what I'd like to do is find real gold.
Exactly.
And then when life throws all sorts of erosions at it, when life throws all sorts of storms at it, the gold may be chipped and maybe all sorts, but guess what you still see underneath? Gold.
Right.
And so change does not happen outside in, but letting it go is less about what happened to you and more about what you lean into.
Right.
And the reality and the truth, maybe this is your foundational truth, is that stuff happens in life.
Yeah.
Welcome to it.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in it. You know, car accidents are going to happen, and many prayers. There was a recent one, and a daughter passed away, and I just want to extend our prayers and
absolutely
and condolences to that family. That was tragic.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and they're going to be trying to answer that question of letting it go for probably a long time. But the truth is,
a long time.
And I'll switch from that because I did want to share a story. You know, I debated on sharing this because I get a little emotional about it. But this year, you know, my family has had a lot of loss. And, you know, my partner in crime growing up, all my siblings were several years older than me. And so my cousin was my BFF. You know, she's like the guaranteed person that you get to play with at all the family get-togethers. When we would go camping, I'd be like, is Amber going to be there? Tony and Lindsay going to be there? I'd be like, oh my gosh. You know, so my aunt and uncle, I just always would beg if they're going to be there because I knew it was immediately going to be a fun time because she was always guaranteed to get us into trouble.
Those are the best kind of cousins right there, Heather.
You know, the stuff that I would be like, maybe we shouldn't do that. She'd be like, oh no, it'll be fine. Let's do it. And I'm like, okay, Amber did it.
Amber did it.
You know, but she was my cousin. She was very close to me, but I don't want to tell it from my perspective because I lost a cousin.
So sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. But, you know, she was a year older than me. She had 3 amazing, beautiful babies that she left behind. It was sudden. There was no anticipating it. It wasn't like she was sick. It just, one minute I found out she was in the hospital, and I was making preparations the next day to go down and see her, and that night I found out no point in going down.
Yeah.
And but more I want to share, you know, the journey and the beautiful faith and the beautiful anchoring I observed in my aunt and my uncle. And you know, that question of letting it go, this would be their second baby that they had to let go of. You know, they had 4, and a cousin of mine before I was born, you know, they had to let go, but then take 2 with my cousin, my partner in crime. And you know, and so when I think about let it go, I first want to say, like, those of you listening, you're not alone in the difficulty of that question. And that's what I think we missed out on last time, was we didn't give that question real weight.
Yeah.
Because I think we can all identify with that struggle and that tragedy, and I think there was nothing more painful than having to think about the fact that I'm a mom. I got 3, and I had to watch my aunt, you know, and I just can't imagine the pain that she went through.
Yeah.
And I knew the pain that I was feeling, but I couldn't imagine what she was going through. And the whole time I'm thinking, you know, the main theme, and that people oftentimes will say, is like they're in a better place, right? Or you're going to see them again. And letting it go, what are you letting go of? You can't let go of the pain. That's not possible.
Yeah.
You can't let go of your memories. You don't want to.
No.
But the memories bring you pain.
Yeah.
So whether it is, a family member or someone that you loved that betrayed you, maybe it's an infidelity in a marriage that you're trying to let go of. Maybe it is your past and decisions that you've made that you're afraid control you and create who you are. The truth is that you're not the culmination of bad decisions. You are not defined by your pain. And so when you're letting go, you can't let go of those things. You can't let go of your story. You can't let go of your experiences. Decisions that you've made them. You can't go back. I don't want to let go of my cousin.
No.
I don't want to let go of those amazing memories we have of realizing that Walmart had cameras and trying on the makeup in the makeup aisle actually does get you into trouble. And I didn't realize that at the time because I was 10. So,
Right.
I don't want to let go of those memories. And I know my family does not either. And so as much as remembering those does bring you pain, it's not that you're letting go, it's that you're pressing into something else.
Right. First of all, I'd like to extend my greatest condolences to you and especially to your aunt.
Yeah.
You know, Heather, that I am the mother. I've lost a child.
I know.
And so here's what I have for you if you're out there struggling, if this is the beginning of this journey of grief for you. I think all of our anchors, whatever those are for you that help you, anchor in, they're all weighted in hope. And the journey of grief it's a tough one. And it's okay to fall on your face and just grieve the person you love.
Mm-hmm.
Here is where you can change your thinking, because I don't want to let go of the memories of my son the same way you don't want to let go of the memories of your cousin. That's not what God asked of us.
No.
But here's what I could let go of. I could let go of the faulty things that I was telling myself.
Yeah.
I was telling myself my fault in this, which really held no weight when I was able to pull out of the fog and look at it.
Mm-hmm.
The small things of the day where you tell yourself little things like, I can't do this today.
Yeah.
I want to encourage you today to stop telling yourself you can't. And
let go of the lies.
Let go of the lies, of those false things you're telling yourself, the false narrative you have going on in your head.
Yes.
It's not going to take the pain away.
No.
But what it will do is it'll loosen that chain that's holding you down.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's been 10 years, and it has been a slow letting go process.
Mm.
But I'm happy today. I'm healthy today. I know that God has a purpose for me. And, as your aunt travels this road that's so difficult to travel,
Mm-hmm.
I just recommend you keep her in prayer,
Mm-hmm.
And encourage her to, on the tough days, to continue going to God,
Mm-hmm.
even when she doesn't understand. So that's a very personal story for me. I didn't plan to get into today. So my voice is a little cracky there, but ultimately, and I just shared this recently, and I will share this really quick because this became very important to me in my journey. My son's funeral service was extremely large. He was only 20, and so he had a lot of friends, and a lot of the community showed up, and there's probably 300 to 400 people in the service area, and I had ducked off to a small room to the side because I could not physically walk in there. And I had a wonderful pastor at the time, Melvin Williams, and his wife Janice Williams, and they too had lost a daughter 20 years before. And they came in, and Miss Janice gently wiped the tears from my face, and she said, "It's time. You have to come in here." And I told her, "No, I don't." Like, there's no one that's going to make me. And she wiped my tears again, and she said, "Jenny, today is the day, and this is the moment where you show people what faith looks like."
Mm.
And so from that moment for me, that was a huge anchor for me, that no matter the depth of my grief,
Yes.
I was going to do my very best to show people that you could still be faithful to God during a loss like this. And some days that took going to God about every 5 minutes. So keep going to God. Keep going to God. There is light at the end of your tunnel as well. God has a plan and a purpose for you. And I just want to encourage you today to stop telling yourself all those faulty things, the things that say, I can't.
Let go of the lie and lean into truth.
Amen.
Because that's what will anchor you when things go.
For sure. For sure.
Thank you, Jenny, for sharing that. And
Thank you for giving me the platform, too. So what tools do you use, Heather?
well, I won't say what tools necessarily. I think that's going to be a big one to bite off. But to end, the way that you know that you've been able to move forward is you just saw it, everybody. When you can talk about it and you can still be real about the pain, but you can talk about it without being controlled by that pain.
That's right.
And that is the difference, because when you have leaned into the truth, it doesn't make what happened to you go away. It doesn't make the bad choices. It doesn't make the past or the history go away. It doesn't make the infidelity go away. That's still going to be a part of your story. But what it means is that you've been able to become a victor over it in spite of it. You've been able to harness those emotions, sometimes the scary ones too. You've been able to bring those in to become a part of you, recognizing that they are a part of you that you'll never be able to let go of or never be able to get rid of. It is part of your story, good or bad, right or wrong. But whenever you look at that, you're able to talk about it, you're able to use it to grow from. And that's how you know that you've done it.
Absolutely. I took my glasses off because they fogged up a little, and now I realize I can't see.
Oh no.
So let me put those back on.
Well, I think it's time to share your story, Jenny.
We're going to move into the moments that matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is a great one, guys. This one isn't so sad. This one should lift you up. It's so wonderful.
I love this story. I'm so excited, Jenny.
So I was working with adolescent boys, ages 9 to 24, and these kids could range in
Up to 21.
Yeah, up to 21.
What we were licensed for.
Yeah, so and the reasons they were there ranged anywhere from, stealing out of the cookie jar to manslaughter.
Yeah.
At one point. And so we had recently just gotten a really large group out of off the east coast of the country, and
which I thought was brilliant, by the way. Such a great decision. But we won't go into that.
I lived it. I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
No, God gave me a lot there too. So these were some African American young men. They were in gangs. A lot of them were.
Well, they'd been in the same gang together, so it was like a gang family essentially that
right,
brought in all at once, all to the same unit.
Right, and so this was a level of gang members and culture that we had never seen before on the floor.
Yeah, I think the placement had just gotten the contract for
right.
That would be bringing in this level of aggression.
Right, and so just to give you an example, I was also working with the federal prisons at the time.
Yeah.
And I was having them come in, and they said to me, "You have how many of these young men housed in that unit?" And I told them I think we had 4 or 5 at the time, and they said, "That's ridiculous. Like, the federal government will not house more than 2 or 3 of these in the same area at the same time." Did you know that?
I did not know that. I mean,
No.
I knew that whenever we got the intake documents, that whenever we realized that these young men were from the same area, and then I found out they were from the same gang, I just in my head was like, this is going to go bad really fast.
Right. So they bring in these boys who look like men, by the way.
Taller than me, picked me up by my shoulders.
Yep, big men. I mean, they're tatted from, this is before tattoos were even the thing.
Don't judge tattoos.
So anyways, this story isn't about these boys. I did have a good time working with them. But so they had been there a couple of weeks, and we get a new admission. And I read the chart, and I am like, oh, no.
And I know exactly, yes, yeah.
Okay, so you know the young man I'm talking about. I won't say his name. We're gonna keep all of our obligations to confidentiality there.
Mm-hmm.
So this young man comes in, and he is linked to one of the most notorious white supremacist groups in our country. Correct?
Yeah, we won't say the name.
We won't say the name.
I think
So-
we all know,
And even the initials of this boy's name carried the weight of that organization.
Yes.
And so I began to read his file, and I thought, oh man,
We're in for
this is going to be a good time right here.
yeah.
So they bring him in. He has
On
this-
the same unit, by the way. So
on the same unit.
The group and organization that was on the unit a couple months before this young man came, they were all going to be mixed together on the same unit.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what we were bracing for.
Yes, so we're bracing for this, and he comes, and we all brace, and we brace, and then we see the young man is just acclimating very well to the unit. And so I have an afternoon with him, and it's just him and I at the desk, and I said, look, I want to know, I've read your chart, I know your history.
Yes.
Tell me what makes you able to interact with these young men over here so well. Is it fake? Like, are you faking that?
So to tie this in with earlier and why this is such a big deal, his foundational truths were developed from birth.
Yes.
For a purpose, with a bias, he was being groomed.
For a very specific purpose.
Yes.
So, excuse me, this young man says to me, he said, Miss Jenny, and I'll never forget the first statement out of his mouth. He said, I have seen my dad do things with log chains that you cannot imagine. And that took my breath away. And I'm like, why did I ask him this question? I don't even think I want to know the answer anymore. And he said, but I want to tell you a story. He said, so when I was 5, 6 years old, we lived in one of the southern states, and my dad was very active in this organization. And so
one of the leaders
yes,
of that organization.
Yes, one of the very, very top leaders. So I'm going to speed this up. He said, we moved into this house, and behind us lived an older black man. And he said, my dad would hang nooses on his porch. On purpose. He would take me to do it. He said, so I would stand at my back fence and I would scream all these racial slurs at this man. And he would continue.
As a 5-year-old?
As a 5 and 6-year-old, yes. And so he said after about a week of him standing at that fence screaming these things as this man did his yard work or whatnot, he walks over to the fence and he said, young man, why do you keep calling me these names? And he said, because my daddy does it, and I'm going to be like my daddy. And he went on and on about his daddy, and that man looked at him and he said, well, that makes sense. He said, young man, all little boys want to be like their daddy, and there is nothing wrong with wanting to be just like your daddy. And he said that just took him aback, even as a 5 and 6-year-old. Now, this was a young man with a lot of intuition.
Very smart.
So he would watch this man, and eventually he ended up climbing the fence and going over to the man's yard, and that man would sit with him every day from that point forward and read the Bible to him and tell him of a Jesus that loves a black man and a white man and an Asian man. And it planted a seed in this young man's heart. And when it became time for his induction in front of thousands and thousands of people for this organization, he took the microphone and declared Jesus and rejected everything that they had taught him from birth. He was 12 years old. He was beat within an inch of his life. He lost his kidney. He bared physical scars for the rest of his life. But he told a truth about Jesus because one man
planted seeds of
seen
truth.
past the ugly.
Yes.
And planted a seed.
That same young man shared with me that his own family, his father and that organization, hunted him down.
Yeah, they hunted him for a long time.
And we essentially were protection.
Yeah, they were actively hunting him, and not to bring him back into the family and love him. No. So he had already lost a kidney and everything. So
I'm so glad you shared that, and I can't believe I'd not even thought about that whenever we had this moment. But to wrap us up today, guys, I want to plant in your mind the idea of normals versus normal. Normal's not always healthy. But when you root into truth, truth stands up. So next week we're going to be teaching you how to tell truth. How was this kid able to realize that how he had been brought up was not healthy, was not right, and was not based in truth. How he was able to do that and start to discern fact from fiction and fear and lies from truth. And so we're really, really happy that you guys were with us. That's the end of our program. We want to thank AWAKEN360, and we want to thank you guys, most importantly, for being a part of Counseling Beyond the Couch. You can catch highlights and past episodes online at AWAKEN360.org, YouTube, and Facebook. Jenny and I will be here every Friday afternoon from 4 to 5. Until next time, remember this truth. You guys are here on purpose. You have a unique and special purpose, and when you're rooted in truth, you can overcome fear and achieve your purpose. We'll sign off for today.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you for listening to Awaken 360's Counseling Beyond the Couch with Heather Freeman, LPC, and Jenny Sodai, LPN. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel for the newest updates and programs. We are launching our A360Y groups for ages 12 to 18. To learn more and register a student or to volunteer to be a group lead, go to www.awaken360.org. Remember to email contact@awaken360.org or message us on Facebook to ask any questions or share your own stories. Until next week, you have a purpose, you're here on purpose, and truth will set you free to achieve that purpose.